kind of premise for RADAR-CNS was to be able to collect data remotely. Our work package was about developing the radar-based platform. And the key challenges for radar-based was to be able to take data that was being thrown at the platform at sort of enormous velocity. So we have devices that are kind of sampling 30 times a second, generating a large amount of data, and being able to kind of hoover all of that data up and manage that at the scale of 1,500 people was pretty challenging. What we've tried to do is organize the data in a sort of structured way. So someone collecting data from one wearable device, it gets structured the same way from the next project that does the same thing. So there's sort of a harmonization sort of built into this, and that's very useful for people sort of doing data analysis, because you can write a tool or an analysis pipeline, and then you can reuse that pipeline very easily. We can use the data from the platform to predict when something happens that is adverse to the patients. And I think the next challenge really is to be able to use that in a kind of clinical application. That's a very different set of challenges. We want to basically be able to sort of say something either before an adverse event occurs or during the time it occurs, because that's the best opportunity to actually intervene. And the way we sort of see things, I think, in our group is that, there is all sorts of interesting use cases here. We can take people out of a hospital environment and put them back in their homes and monitor them there. That's just obvious efficiencies that we might be able to intervene before something happens. They're stopping the need for further treatment.
RADAR-CNS is one particular program that has a vast collection of data sets across many individuals and multimodal data streams. So it's an ideal data set for anyone to replicate any findings from a program that from industry has been developed and so on. So that's one use case. And the other use case is to see for the industry perspective, to see how can it be used to patients, identify the patients who can be at risk of relapse and who can be intervened early with the different drugs that we develop and so on. So it can essentially bring more efficacy to the drug as well, and also increase their, improve the outcomes for the patients as well. So it's like a win-win for all in this direction.
I've been working on speech and machine learning in the project. What we're doing is, in machine learning, we're looking for very, very fine patterns, very subtle differences in data, differences that we as humans can't see and can't realize, but a machine can find these.
We asked participants in all three arms to record their speech in a couple of different activities, and what we're interested in is how people speak rather than the words they're saying. Speech is actually really special. It involves about 100 different muscles. It's the fastest coordinated movement we do, and it also has a fair amount of cognitive activity involved, because we've got to think what we want to say, the message, and then plan how we're going to say that. So we're looking at how well we can collect that data, if we can find ways to pull these bits of treasure out of someone's voice. We can learn a lot about someone's health state, mental and physical.
So we've got some initial results coming out of the speech research showing that we can predict someone's, if it has a low or a high depression status, just using speech samples at an accuracy of 80%. And we've done that using some sort of state-of-the-art deep learning, which has been really exciting.
So we have learned quite a few things about how to also derive insights from the data. We are continuing to analyze these data in various ways and develop many novel algorithms. I think another major finding that we have is that it's much more important to have long-term longitudinal data from a given individual than to have small amounts of sparse data from a large number of individuals.
Our work package was the work package on clinical harmonization, and we were basically trying to be the glue between the three clinical work packages on the one hand, and on the other hand the technical work packages working on the platform development. 6 years ago I would never have dreamed that we would be here today, both in the enormous amount of data we collected, but also in terms of the platform, all the different features that we can extract and how they actually are used in those different disorders to get really meaningful information on what happens to people's daily life and how that translates to changes in their disorder. I think that has been an amazing achievement.
When we first built the platform, we were principally aiming to satisfy the objectives of RADAR-CNS, but very quickly, once we'd done that, there were all sorts of other projects out there studying different diseases, or studying the same diseases but using different devices, and they were able to basically leverage the 3 years or so that we'd invested in producing the platform. There was a key choice in RADAR-CNS was to either keep the platform as a sort of closed application, but I think made a sensible decision to open source that, which essentially allowed all these other projects to benefit from this.